Coming up next on Ask the Tech Guy, which TV should I buy? Ask the Tech Guy comes to you from TWiT's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
This is TWiT.
This episode of Ask the Tech Guy is brought to you by LastPass. Visit lastpass.com/twit. I have a question here in my hands from Bill in Scottsdale, Arizona. Actually, technically, he wrote to ask this of Scott Wilkinson. But Scott's not here right now. It's Ask the Tech Guy, and I have some opinions, so I'll answer it, and I'll let Scott answer it. We're going to buy, says Bill, a 65-inch TV from Costco. We're considering two models, an LG 4K UHD LED LCD for $500, or a Samsung 4K UHD LED LCD TV for $480. Are they good TVs? Are they well priced? Do you like one over the other? Do you have a suggestion for 65-inch other than those two in roughly the same price range? They've got a 12-year-old Mitsubishi that's getting ready to expire. We want a larger screen. Bill, I'm glad to help you. This gives me an excuse to kind of explain all of this alphabet soup that's around modern TVs. I'll start off by saying LG, Samsung, they're excellent. Both of them will give you a great picture. That's a great price for 65 inches. I bought a 65-inch TV not so long ago for about $4,000. There really are two technologies you should be aware of for LCD or big screen flat panel displays. There's LCD, and that is, even if it says QLED or LED, it's still an LCD. The way LCDs work, liquid crystal displays work, is kind of like a shutter. The liquid crystal is actually a shutter that opens and closes very rapidly. Behind it, there is a backlight. And the backlight is white. It is as pure a white light as they can get. And there are a variety of ways of generating that. In the old days, it used to be fluorescent. Now it's almost always LED, hence the LED in the name. But it's still a liquid crystal display with shuttering. And, of course, it does red, green, and blue. And it changes those appropriately to give you the right colors. So most of the time when you're talking about different technologies with LCD TVs, you're really talking about the backlight. And there are varieties of ways of doing this. Scott Wilkinson will talk about something called FALD, which is full array local dimming. That is basically, when we had fluorescent tubes, you'd have a few fluorescent tubes, and you might have noticed, it might be on your Mitsubishi TV, some hot spots, some brighter spots. It wasn't even. With full array local dimming, you have a full array of LEDs. They're cheaper than fluorescents. They're also more reliable behind the liquid crystal shutters so that there is an even amount of light on almost every pixel. That's important. And local dimming is great because it means instead of just opening and closing the shutter to a certain degree to make it brighter or darker, you can even turn the backlight in a local area down or off, which gives you a broader dynamic range. Darker blacks, brighter whites. That's always something that's been a problem on LCDs. LCDs are very bright. They're great for brightly lit rooms. They're also the least expensive technology out there. But they've always had an issue compared to the older plasma technology and the newer OLED technology. They just didn't have the dynamic range, the high dynamic range of darkest darks and brightest brights because this backlight couldn't be dimmed. So FALD, full array local dimming, is the most recent technology to help you get a broader dynamic range of lighting on your TV, and that really helps. The most important thing, frankly, if you ask me, among all the specs, we talk about UHD or 4K, that's the number of dots on the screen. We also talk about HDR. That is the most important spec, high dynamic range, because the broader the dynamic range, the more like real world lighting it looks like. Even today, TVs, photography, very few things can cover the full array of brightness and darkness that your eyes can. But the closer they come, the more natural, the more realistic it'll look. And nowadays, since many movies are shot in HDR, many sources are HDR, it really does make a difference in the quality. I think more than the resolution, especially with a big screen like that. You're going to be sitting at a little bit of a distance, 10 feet probably, or more from the TV. The number of pixels per inch is less important than the HDR. So HDR is good, and I would recommend it. I should mention that if you're looking at these 4K TVs, you will not get the benefit of a 4K TV or HDR unless your input sources support 4K HDR as well. This is something that happens to people when they buy these new TVs, you know, $500, great deal, and then they realize, but I'm not getting 4K pictures because you're using an old cable box or an old Roku or an old Apple TV. You will be upgrading, if you want to get that full benefit of those beautiful TVs, the sources. Your cable box can go to 4K. Call your cable company. There are 4K Rokus, the Roku Ultra. Apple TV comes in 4K as well. If you use an AV receiver, it will also have to be 4K. So if you're pumping your Apple TV into a receiver and then into your TV, you're going to have to upgrade the receiver as well. I ended up buying everything new in order to support my TV. Now, the best pictures in 4K are actually not LCD. I think they've made some great progress. QLED is really good. FALD, full array local dimming, as I mentioned, is really good. Samsung's doing some great stuff, but LG is too. But the best picture in flat screen TVs these days is OLED. They don't make plasmas anymore. OLED's the best. It is more expensive. It'll cost you more than the $500 you're looking at. So if that's your price point, I think both of those TVs are very, very good choices. There are other manufacturers you might want to look at. If you want to get a bigger TV or maybe more features, Hisense and TCL, the up-and-coming Chinese manufacturers, make excellent TVs at an even lower price because they're trying to get into the market. You might want to check those out. But I would not hesitate to pick either the Samsung or the LG. Both of them are going to look good. Problem is you can't tell at the Costco because they're set on the demo mode, which is a very bright, colors are extra vivid to make you go, ooh, that looks good. That's not what you want. When you get it home, you're going to turn that off, put it in cinema mode. The colors will be more muted. The light will be not quite as bright. It'll be more natural. When your eyes get used to that, it's actually preferable. It's a much more accurate picture, but that's never what they show in the store. So it's very hard to judge side-by-side TVs. There's one more thing to consider in both of these, and that's the software. Both LG and Samsung make smart TVs. That means you can run Netflix, YouTube. You might even be able to run a browser in them. I caution you against using that as a way to choose TVs because in most cases, smart TVs, the software is not as good as the same software running on a Roku or an Apple TV. They're not kept as up to date. It's not unusual, for instance, I have Samsung TVs that the browsers are no longer useful because they've expired and they haven't been keeping them up to date. You'll also find with Samsung anyway, they put ads in the smart TV interface. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't want to see ads for Samsung products. In some cases, you can turn that off. But I would, if you think you're going to use the smart TV features, I would look at them and make sure, A, that the usability is good. I think Samsung and LG both are fairly good in that regard. But you might want to try it to make sure you agree. You like the remote. I think, again, that's more a matter of personal taste than actual technical differences. I think they're both pretty good. And I would take a look at the interface for the smart TV if they're showing you ads. You should also read, I know this is a lot of work, but you might want to also read the privacy statement. One of the reasons I'm not a fan of smart TVs in general is they very often, in fact, I would say almost universally, certainly with Samsung, and I bet with LG too, watch what you're watching and send that information back to marketers for advertising and ratings purposes. You may not want that. What I generally do with smart TVs, I don't connect them to the internet. I don't want the smart features, and I really don't want the privacy invasion. When you don't connect a TV like that to the internet, it can't do that. It can't watch what you're watching. It can't put ads on the screen, but you won't be able to use the smart TV features. So that's another reason to recommend getting a good Roku Ultra or an Apple TV 4K, plugging that into the TV and using that instead of using the Samsung or LG smart TV features. I know I didn't give you the answer you wanted, which is buy this one, but that's because they're both excellent. And the price absolutely is good. It is a good idea to check to see if you're getting the latest model. I'm looking at these model numbers. It's going to be a little tricky because when they sell in big box stores, a lot of companies, and both Samsung and LG are doing this, use model numbers that don't match what they use when they sell in other places. So you can't compare models. Often the models sold in the big box stores are older. They're last year's TV. And normally with both LG and Samsung, that model number would tell you what year it is, but they've changed these so that you can't tell. You might do a Google search on UN 7300 or TU 700D to see what model year that is. Not the worst thing in the world. That's one of the reasons they're very affordable. If it's last year's model, there haven't been big leaps forward in technology. It's just something to be aware of. I think those are excellent choices. You're certainly going to get a massive improvement over your 12-year-old Mitsubishi. 65 inches is a good size. It really does depend on how close you are to the TV. 65 inches is okay for 10 feet, but if you're going to be 15 feet or more behind, you're going to want to get a bigger TV because ideally, unlike your Mitsubishi now, times have changed. This TV is almost a cinema-like experience. Ideally, you want it to cover 45, 50 degrees of view. It's not going to be 90 degrees, but you don't want to be looking left and right. It's not like you're sitting in the front row at the movie theater. But you want enough so that your peripheral vision is actually seeing something. So that's about 50 degrees, something like that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's 90 degrees. So you want to be fairly close to it. There are online guides to viewing angle and distance and the appropriate size. 65 is pretty big. That's going to be a nice TV. I think you're going to be happy no matter which one you buy. But there's some things to think about in terms of the technologies. Our show today brought to you by LastPass. We know you cannot trust your most valuable data with just any company. That's why LastPass has been my choice for identity and access management. But we aren't the only ones. LastPass has been named a leader in the G2 Fall Grid reports. People love LastPass. So does your IT department. They can leverage over 100 policies and advanced security features, or use LastPass's out-of-the-box configurations for a good balance between security and convenience. Visit LastPass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. That's LastPass.com/twit. And that's it for this edition of Ask the Tech Guy. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you'll have a wonderful, safe week, because we want to see you back here next Monday. I'm Leo Laporte, your tech guy. Send me questions at AskTheTechGuy@twit.tv. Have a great week.
Stumped on a nasty tech conundrum? Email AskTheTechGuy@twit.tv.